Yo, what's happening, Rush Nation? What's good? We're back. It's episode 65 of the 5 Yard College Pod, and I'm joined by Ash, my indefatigable wingman. How are you doing, my friend?
I am doing fantastic. Don't know what indefatigable means, but yeah, doing great.
I gotta say, I don't know either. I just know it's the ship from Hornblower, that really old sort of British pirate drama. No, that's gone right over your head, hasn't it?
Definitely gone right over my head. We're off to a great start.
To be fair, it was pretty good. It was based around the time of sort of the French Revolution, and you know who Johan Griffin is, the actor Johan Griffin.
Nope.
Okay, this is wasted chat. Anyway, we're here. Week two is firmly in the books, and Ash, it's going to happen. There's going to be some Ohio State chat. You know it's coming, but I'm hoping that you can put your, how do we say this, fair hat on and appreciate the football game that we saw over the weekend. Any comments to start us off right there at Ohio State? Ash, that one is for you, my friend.
Yeah, well, I know. I've already seen. I already caught Murph's little comment at the end of the rush video, so really appreciate that. And I've already seen that he's put in the chat about Oregon, so you know we're off to a great start. We'll get into that game a bit later, but I mean, yeah, not great for us, but you have to give props to Oregon. I can't deny that.
Yeah, we'll get to that, as you say, in a little bit. Obviously, we're going to hit some news. There is going to be some 5 Yard Showdown chat, Rush Nation, because Ash and I faced off in a week 2, I guess, clash of the Titans, we could call it nowadays. But you know, sneakily, I'm sort of sitting on the fence in the showdown this year, obviously, because now I'm here with you boys. I obviously want to win it. Defending champ, got to admit, I am in a little bit of trouble, 0-2 right now. But if I win it, then I take the crown for 5 Yard. But if I don't, 5 Yard College wins it. So it's win-win. It's win-win for me.
That's true, actually. Yeah, we are technically 7 against 5 now, if you really think about it. So,
well, I think it's more like 5, 6, and 1, and I'll play that sort of sweeper keeper role. That
devil's advocate. Yeah, you know,
advocate.
That's it. Yeah.
Okay, Ash, let's hit some news. Florida's cornerback Jaden Hill has avoided prosecution on theft charges after reaching an agreement with Alachua County Court. The cornerback, who is sidelined with a torn ACL, was arrested in June for breaking into a car, stealing a debit card, and making purchases with it. Man, oh man. Let's hope he did that before the torn ACL, otherwise there's all sorts of questions there.
Yeah, right. I think they've settled outside of court, and it looks as though from a legal aspect that's it done. Of course, he's sidelined with a torn ACL at the moment, so I suspect the program aren't as desperate to put action on him. If he was still playing, might have been another story. We probably could have seen an internal suspension, but yeah, it's recurring theme. We unfortunately cover a lot of news like this most weeks. So, but it's Jaden Hill was one of the bigger defensive backs for Florida. So it's a big loss when he got injured, and of course this news coming out as well. We knew about it back in June when he was first arrested, but obviously it's put to bed from a legal standpoint now, which is good for him personally.
Absolutely. Let's move on to some huge news that broke. Man, we recorded last Wednesday, and this broke fairly soon after we recorded. The Big 12's remaining members have voted unanimously to extend official membership offers to BYU, Cincinnati, Houston, and UCF. BYU will enter in 2023 because they're an independent, can basically go whenever they want, whilst the other 3 schools will join in 23 or 24. Ash, am I right in thinking that these schools have pretty much accepted already, since this news broke, that the invitations have been sent?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, they were all essentially from their side. They wanted this from as soon as the news came out, and before that, obviously. So as soon as the official membership was offered to them, by the looks of it, they all accepted instantly. What's interesting is the Big 12 back in 2016 looked at potential expansion then, and these 4 teams were in consideration there. So this isn't an immediate reaction to the Oklahoma, Texas news, as it may appear on the outset. These guys have been in conversation with the Big 12 and vice versa for a number of years. They've taken the opportunity with Texas and Oklahoma going to bring them in, and they brought in four great teams. We discussed it last week, and it's a big pickup for the Big 12, and it's a big move for all four of these teams. They are four of the bigger teams outside of the Power 5 again, as we mentioned last week. And
Yep.
yeah, it's a good move for both sides. It keeps the Big 12 relevant, and it gives these guys more of a platform than they already had as part of the Power 5.
And it's an interesting one with Texas and Oklahoma now on the recruiting standpoint, because how do you go to a prospect saying, come and play in the Big 12 where competition isn't necessarily as good, but then in a few years' time, perhaps we'll be in the SEC. You might get a game then against better teams because the SEC is predominantly better, as we know. But if you're not necessarily a 5-star or 4-star, but if you're a 3-star prospect who might get some game time but might not get in straight away, might be on part of the rotation, you want to go and play sort of SEC football as quick as possible, really, to get the best competition, where this might be a bit of an issue for Texas, not so much Oklahoma, but maybe Texas, because of the situation and there's something like, if they pay $80 million now, they can possibly move into the SEC sooner or something along those lines. So are we expecting the boosters to sort of suddenly find that money and get them in quicker?
Yeah, they essentially need to buy out their media contracts. That's the sticking point for both Oklahoma and Texas. They are committed to the Big 12 due to media contracts that they've been given. They can buy out. It's a lot of money, even for a program like Texas or Oklahoma. I would be very surprised to see them come out early. But you're right, the recruitment changes drastically now. I'd say more so for Texas than it does Oklahoma. Texas are in a really interesting spot. We myself and Tom a couple of months back, and we mentioned it last week, that the win they got last week, everyone was on the high, and we'll get onto it a bit later. But this week they sort of came right back down to earth, and they are the up and down team that we've seen for the last couple of years for Texas. So moving over to the SEC conference, I think as a whole is going to be a good move for them, because it's arguably one of the biggest conferences in college football. There's not a lot disputing that, unfortunately. But at the same time, they move into that conference as in my opinion, a middling team. They're not suited to be a powerhouse. We're going to come into the SEC and challenge. Whereas Oklahoma, I'd say you could probably argue they are going to walk in and give Bama and the like a bit of run for their money. But Texas are in a really interesting spot. I think SEC as a whole will probably improve their recruitment. It just has that draw to it, but they're in an interesting spot. And as you say, I think the Big 12 getting these 4 teams in will also improve their recruitment prospects for the next, when they eventually enter, because you've still got these 4 big programs coming in that were already good recruiters from a Power 5 and an independent standpoint.
Yeah, and it bounces back to that recruiting thing again with Texas, whereas now you come play for Texas, one of the 2 big teams in the Big 12, the Texas history and all of that, whereas suddenly, like you say, they join the SEC as a middling team, and if you're going to go to an SEC team, it's not necessarily going to be Texas, whereas if you are going to go to a Big 12 team as they currently stand, it's going to be Texas or Oklahoma. So that would be interesting to see how Texas fare recruiting going forward once in the SEC as well, because they might not be able to get the sort of Hudson Cards and the Bijan Robinsons and players like that who perhaps might go to an SEC team that are better. So that'll be interesting for them heading forward as well. Do you want to talk about that game now, considering it isn't one of the games of the week we covered last week, or should we wait until we get to the scores for Texas?
No, I mean we can cover it now. We probably should cover it now, because it was that there were some people out there that weren't as surprised when this result happened. But I think the core of the people that follow the college game will be very surprised at the way this game panned out. I think Arkansas were going to give Texas a good game. They are a team that is on the up, in particular this year. They're a team that people are starting to pay more attention to, not in the same, like, not as a challenger by any means, but they are certainly improving and getting better year on year. But I think they absolutely just dominated Texas from the outset. Texas never really looked good at all. And I think the scoreline is, I mean, Arkansas put 40 on them, But I think even so, the scoreline is flattering for Texas. They scored 2 late touchdowns, and they just did not look anything. They just looked terrible. When you think last week they played Louisiana, who are a good defense, and they beat them and they played well, and people were getting excited about Texas again. And you come to this week and it's straight back to how we expect to see them, and even worse in one aspect, because they just didn't look good across the board. And I think credit has got to go to Sam Pittman, the Arkansas head coach, because he's done a fabulous job to this day, and he game planned this performance incredibly well against Texas. And that you cannot take anything away from Arkansas by any means, but at the same time, just Texas looked toothless for almost the whole game. And by the time they got the 2 touchdowns, Arkansas took their foot off the gas because the game was done. And the 21 points are probably a bit flattering for Texas in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, and it's interesting. If you'd have flipped the results from week 1 and week 2, and they'd have got a loss in week 1 and a win in week 2, it would have been probably more palatable from what we know of Texas than the way it's fallen currently. And especially when Steve Sarkisian comes out, he says we're an SEC team, we're gonna play like an SEC team, and we're gonna show what the SEC what's coming. And then they come up against the middling of the road Arkansas. All right, Arkansas played well, but they're not one of the SEC powerhouses. And if this is anything to go by, Texas moving to the SEC is troublesome, just because they're only going to be in a spot of bother. And if it's just for the money, perhaps it's not necessarily the right move.
Yeah, no, you're completely right there. It's it's an interesting time for Texas as a whole, for the program, for the fans, the upcoming move. We're obviously a couple of years out. There are some great youngsters there that are waiting to come through and that are already starting. Obviously, Hudson Card last week had a great game. This week he has been found out as a freshman. That's going to happen as a freshman more times than none. But
yeah,
they've got a good baseline there. But I think it is slightly troubling times. I think I still expect Texas to finish with a positive record. Some of their schedule this year is a walkover, and it should be. And I think if you were to look at this game beforehand, yes, you would have, as I said earlier, expected Arkansas to win. But at the same time, it was a challenge for Texas. But this is a surprising result, and it's going to have to be looked at internally. Sarkisian is obviously in his second game. He's still trying to get his philosophy across. There's no doubt about that. He is a great coach. I expect him to have some success with Texas, but it's a very interesting time, and I'm really intrigued to see where it goes from here, because at the moment it really could go either way. As I say, they've got some incredible players on this team, but just across the board, it just seems to be missing something. Whether it's the mentality, they haven't picked up the new scheme from the changeover from Herman to Sarkisian. It's early days, but as I say, Texas are not the team that we once saw. We mentioned it last week, and yeah, it's just very interesting times for them, to be honest with you.
It's interesting as well, because the job that Steve Sarkisian's got now isn't necessarily the job he applied for when taking it on, because when he took it on, there was no talk of leaving the Big 12 or anything like that. And now all of a sudden he's going to be pushed into the SEC as a team that perhaps isn't the powerhouse that they are in the Big 12, as you mentioned. And yeah, but then Sark's been all over the place. He's well-traveled, well-versed, and it's not a rebuild that happens instantly there. So maybe you're right. Maybe it's a scheme thing, and they take a few weeks to get going. But it's interesting going forward for Texas. In a slow news week, Ash, we've got a couple of tidbits here that are not necessarily football related, but we'll start with the first of the two. And probably the most bizarre, actually, and that's not true. My next one's going to get you. But in one of the most bizarre stories of the week, a cat was saved by fans in the Hard Rock Stadium at the Miami game. The cat somehow managed to get into the upper deck of the stadium and then was dangling from a wire off of the edge below the hoardings. And some quick thinking fans below used the American flag. I guess they'd taken it with them because it was September the 11th. And as the cat fell, they managed to catch him in their makeshift net, as you were. But thankfully, the cat was uninjured. But he did manage to be then. I think he urinated all over the fans who were around the landing zone as someone held him up a little bit like the Simba in Lion King, and that didn't end up too well. But thankfully, the cat was fine and was taken away by staff members. But I take it you've seen the video of that, Ash.
I have indeed, yeah. Well, when I seen it whilst I was watching the NFL yesterday. I heard about it on at the time, but I only actually caught the video itself yesterday, and it says a lot about this game that this was the most newsworthy thing that happened. The actual Miami App State game was not great. It was a game to forget, but thankfully, as you say, the cat was saved. You just see him dangling there, and it's like, firstly, what happened? How are you there? And then, of course, obviously, it gave the fans a cheer. It was something to remember it by, and it is definitely one of the strangest stories of the week, and what I thought was the strangest story of the week. But I have a feeling you're gonna stump that.
Yeah, so I hadn't heard about this until I was listening to a podcast. I can't remember which one it was earlier, and they mentioned the Grambling Southern Miss game, and I'm thinking that's a very obscure game to be mentioning. And apparently, Southern Miss tweeted out that a portion of one of the tunnels had been sealed off because there was a lady who was about to give birth at the ground, and as it transpired, she didn't give birth at the ground. She made it to hospital, and it gave birth at I'm not sure what it was, boy or girl at hospital, but it came across to my, if I've got, are you going to a game knowing you are that close to labor? Or if you've got a bad stomach, are you going to go to a Southern Miss Grambling game? Is that game of that magnitude for you to go to? I mean, as the husband or partner of that woman, if you went to that and you missed the birth because you were at a Grambling game, it's just the fact she was at the game and nearly gave birth in the tunnel.
Yeah, I mean, they are passionate about college football, and I think that hits the nail on the head of just how passionate they are. That is commitment to the cause. Where, like, whether you're a week or too early or a week or too late or on time to as you say, to go to a football game that close to your due date, that is commitment to the team that you're going to watch. So yeah, it just shows you the passion of the American fans, and yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, I probably haven't portrayed the story too well, but yeah, I couldn't believe it when I heard it.
A woman almost giving birth in a stadium that's gone to watch a college football game. Just that says enough, really, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's crazy. Right, Ash, before we jump into the showdown, if you want to do the showdown next, we can flex and go results. It's completely up to you. But before we do, I think we need to talk about Manscaped. Last week, I said I want to talk about balls. This week, we're going a bit more professional. We have partnered up with Manscaped and their new Lawnmower 4.0 body trimmer. It's designed for groin grooming with its skin-safe technology. It means you can be boxer fresh all day long. It's one thing less to worry about, knowing that you're in safe hands and there will be no nicks, Rush Nation. If you use the code 5Yard at checkout, you'll save 20% off your order plus free international shipping on your order. So that's shipping and 20% off. It's an absolute bargain. I can use it. I've used it, and I can honestly say that I've never been more scared to test out the skin-safe technology, but I'm happy to report there was no blood spilt on that day. As you can see, Ash has got his t-shirt on today. Ash, how's the t-shirt? Is it comfy?
Oh, it's really comfy, actually. Yeah, it's one of the comfiest t-shirts I own. Genuinely.
Yeah, I agree. Mine is fantastic. So if you head over to Manscaped today, use the code 5Yard, you'll get 20% off your order and free worldwide shipping. Your balls will thank you. Ash, showdown or results? You choose.
We've got to do showdown first. Let's get out of the way for you.
Well, I know. I no shame.
It's been
we went close. We went close. First week. Do you want to run through the standings, then go through week one, or do you want to do week one and then the standings? What do you think is the best way to tease the fans?
Do you know what? Let's do the standings, we'll see who's on top, and then we'll go through week 1 and week 2. I think let's do it that way.
All right, no, that's fine. It works out well for you here, Ash, because in first is Jack. Our last year's beaten finalist is 2-0. Jord is also 2-0. Ash, your good self, is 2-0. Rich from Team Rush. So the first 3 were all Team College. Then Team Rush's Rich is 1-1. Ollie from Team Rush is also 1-1. Shane from Team Rush is 1-1, who gave me a damn good thrashing in week 1. So thank you, Shane. Tom from Team College is 1-1. Murph, Team Rush is 1-1. Adam, Team College is 1-1. And then I am in lowly 10th at 0-2, 0-2. I don't know the correct pronunciation. Connor and Dougie. Connor from Team College is 0-2, and Dougie from Team Rush is 0-2. Sitting pretty at the top there, Ash, in Team College. They're holding out those top 3 spots right now.
We are, of course, it's still early days, two weeks in, but it's a good start for Team College. Unsurprisingly, Jack is once again at the top. He was there for pretty much all of last year until right until the end, unfortunately.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
No, it doesn't matter. That's it. It's the last game that matters. He can be at the top all he wants, and of course, let's hope that we get 2 Team Colleges there into the final this year. But getting ahead of ourselves, week 1, as you said, you unfortunately matched up with Shane, who is of course also a Team Rush and who scored the most points of the week. And what did you have? 3rd? I believe you had 3rd most points in the week. So
yeah, I did, and I had a 0. I'd annoyingly, so week 1. We mentioned this after the pod actually last week, Ash. Week 1, I had the Boise State running back who suited up, got injured in warm-ups, and then didn't play, so he was locked into my lineup. And then the same issue, not the same player, but the same issue happened to me again this week. I replaced him with Ortman Bell, the Minnesota wide receiver, who took to the field in his gear and looked good in pre-game warm-ups, and then never came out to play. So when I saw that he was warming up in his uniform, I was happy. I thought he's going to play. He's back, one of the best receivers in college. And then he didn't play. And I got a 0. And I think you beat me by 6 or 7 points, which had I swapped him out from my bench, I would have got the dub. So all I can say is play someone who isn't necessarily an injury risk.
yeah, beat by 4 points. So that change, could have made a massive amount of difference, to be fair. I was a bit worried, to be honest, to start with, when I was seeing Emory Jones. I should have really taken him out after last week with his backup Richardson, I believe, is outperforming him from the bench when he's coming on for design plays. And to be honest, me and Tom were talking about it in text yesterday. It could be a matter of time before this is a split QB or Richardson takes over. Emory Jones has got to step it up. I kept Uangulele on the bench the 2nd week in a row. That was a mistake this time. Yeah. Fortunately, he only scored 3 less points than Jones, so didn't quite hurt as much eventually, because Jones got a couple of touchdowns, which was good at the end of the day. But yeah, our result was really close. 4 points in it, as you say. That 0 point for you made a massive difference for me, which is great. And
you're welcome.
Yeah, no, appreciate it. Thank you. But it's competitive, as we were hoping it would be this year. We had, unfortunately, last year a few teams that didn't didn't start at all. They didn't start from the offset. This year, everyone looks committed. There's been some high scoring games. Every game pretty much has been high scoring, and there's been a lot of close games. And I'm hoping that will keep up as the season goes on. People stay involved and active. And college brings it home. Personally, I hope it's me, but as long as it's college that brings home the title this year, I'll be happy, because we are 0-1 against Rush from last year, so we have to bring it home this year, and we are starting off right. So let's hope that can continue for college.
Yeah, I think I started stronger last year, so this is a position I'm not used to being in, 10th, 0-2, but you're right. You can see that it's active because people are using the waiver wires. There's a lot more emails dropping into my box about the waiver being added and lost and taken and stuff. So it's good to see. And the games, like the points and stuff, is really close. It's almost a sort of between a 150 and a 170 is an average week, and then you get the occasional team who pops off, like Rich did this week with a 226.15 week. Jack also got 227, but then everyone else is round about the 150 to 170. So yeah, it's good. I'm enjoying it as well. I mean, Fantrax still sucks, right? But it's, for some reason, Yahoo aren't doing it this year, which was the first year me and you did it on, and that was much better experience. But we need to champion college fantasy. I mean, I don't know why it isn't a bigger thing, because the pool of players to choose from is much bigger. And if you think someone like Sleeper took it under their wing and built a college, it would be phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. Great.
Yeah, definitely. If Sleeper decided to pick up college football, fantasy football, that would be unreal, because I think they would do an amazing job of it. As you say, it's probably maybe slightly controversial, but it's like another level to NFL, as you say, because there's just so many players. There's hundreds and hundreds of players across just the Power 5 and the Group of 5, which predominantly the fantasy football looks at. But if you want to go even deeper, mental.
Like the chap in week 1 who scored 10 touchdowns for I can't even remember his team name, but he did it also.
Presbyterian.
Yeah,
that's it. Yeah,
Presbyterian. Yeah, he scored 10 touchdowns, and he did it inside 2.5 quarters. Really, he was taken off halfway through the third. So, if you started him in college football fantasy, you had yourself a day right there. But I mean, if you're starting him, your knowledge is superb. Is all I can say. Ash, the results have been running along the bottom of the screen. Let's dive through them all real quick, and we can talk about the games that matter, and then when we get to the big games, we'll talk about them a little bit more. Would you like to go first or second in the Power 5? I'll tell you what, I'll go first. I'm ACC. I'm taking the lead. Virginia beat Illinois 42-14. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Georgia Tech beat Kennesaw State 45-17. Wake Forest beat Norfolk State 41-16. Pitt and Tennessee, which was my ACC game of the week. Pitt won 41-34. My Hokies, Virginia Tech beat Middle Tennessee 35-14. Rutgers beat Syracuse in an interesting low-scoring affair, 17-7. Boston College beat Massachusetts 45-28, but did lose Phil Djokovic to injury, but don't know how bad that is. He suited up in the second half, but didn't come back, so I think that's okay. Clemson got back to winning ways with a 49-3 win over South Carolina State. Miami narrowly beat out App State 24-23. Louisville beat Eastern Kentucky 33. Mississippi State beat NC State in somewhat of an upset 24-10. North Carolina also got back to winning ways with a 59-17 win over Georgia State. The Florida State Seminoles took the L against Jacksonville State 2017. And finally, Duke beat North Carolina A&T 45-17. Anything from the ACC stand out to you there, Ash?
Yeah, I mean, we've got to talk about that Jacksonville State Florida State game, haven't we? Really, the crazy finish of that one.
I mean, if you listen to any college football podcast from Saturday evening till this time of recording right now, what is it, 8:30, something like that, you will have heard about the Jacksonville State Florida State game and how Florida State were pretty awful and then imploded with 6 seconds to go.
They were truly awful, but you've got to give credit to Jacksonville. They brought it. I think they were close to 30 points underdogs in this one. I want to say it was like 27 or 28 point underdogs.
Give me 20 seconds and I'll tell you. Keep talking.
They brought it. Like you say, Florida imploded. They were up until the fourth quarter, and then from there I just don't know what happened. Norvell is running a fine line. He had an indifferent last year, which of course was massively impacted by COVID. Last year, we've got to look as a write-off for a lot of teams. That's granted. Last week, they came so close to beating Notre Dame, and everyone was like, "This might be the turning point for Florida State. We could be getting back to the team that we saw a few years ago." And then this. They were just putrid from the outset. They were up at halftime. They were up until the fourth quarter, but they never looked comfortable. Not at one moment did they look comfortable. And then 2 touchdowns with 5 minutes to go, with that last 83 yard play, 83 yard drive down the field by Jacksonville State with about a minute and a half left. Jacksonville State always looked like scoring at that point, and the game was there. They had the momentum. They had the confidence. Florida State looked like they were already in the locker room ready to go. And as I say, Norvell is already walking a fine line. You can't really put it into words how bad this performance was from them, and at the same time how good the performance was from Jacksonville State. The FCS team came into town 28-point underdogs or close to that, and
it was 28.
Yeah, lost their first game of the season. I don't think they've ever beaten an FBS team. Could be wrong again, but
I think it might have been their second. I think from reviewing it earlier, it's their second.
But even so, I mean, you've got to give so much credit to them. They were phenomenal in the game. Even when they were losing, they kept the game close, and then they turned it on in the fourth quarter, and they got the deserved victory, 100%. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, it was deserved, but the play that won it was a 59-yard. I don't even know what to call it, because the quarterback obviously saw the coverage that FSU were playing. And I mean, they were 59 yards out, 6 seconds left on the clock, and they played cover one, like not prevent or anything. They played to avoid the field goal, and the chances of Jacksonville State getting into field goal territory with 6 seconds left and then being able to stop the clock is almost impossible. So the fact they only had one guy back covering the deep ball was a joke. And then they missed 2 tackles on that 59-yard play that was broken open because of coverage. It's just, it beggars belief the way that game finished. It really does.
Yeah, definitely.
Right, Ash, you're next up. And you've got the Big Ten.
I do indeed, and we are starting.
I know you don't want to, but come on, it's your turn.
I've seen the third game, and I already want to end the show now. But first up, Northwestern won 24-6 against Indiana State. Minnesota made up for the loss to Ohio State last week with the 31-26 victory over Miami, Ohio. Oregon came into town and beat Ohio State 35-28. Michigan State beat Youngstown 42-14, and despite the opposition they were facing, it looked incredibly impressive for the second week, I have to say. UConn started their incredibly poor season. Well, they continued it, shall I say, with the 49-0 loss to Purdue. Penn State beat Ball State 44-13, which... I mean, a lot of people expected Penn State to win, but Ball State, I would have thought, would have given them a bit more of a competition. And I think that just shows the improvement Penn State are making this year compared to last year. And they are stating a claim for themselves in the Big Ten this year, and will push Ohio close, I believe. Nebraska beat Buffalo 28-3. One of our games of the week, Iowa versus Iowa State. Iowa won this one 27-17. We will cover that one in a bit more detail later. Wisconsin beat Eastern Michigan 34-7. Maryland hammered Howard 62-0. Indiana beat Idaho 56-14. And Michigan beat Washington Huskies 31-10. The Huskies are 0-2, and Michigan looked mightily impressive in this game. In my opinion, they controlled this game from the outset, and they've started the year well. Surprisingly for some, they have got an incredibly hard road towards the end of the year, the Michigan Wolverines schedule, but they're starting the year off right, and we'll cover the Huskies when we get to the Pac-12. But they certainly aren't starting the year right, considering a lot of expectation was put on them this year.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to gloss over it? I suppose we have to talk about it, mate.
But it's on the game of the week. We'll talk about it in a bit. I don't want to talk about it. I'm not ready. I'm not ready to talk about it yet.
Fine. We will continue to move on. And we'll talk about it in a little bit.
Yeah.
We'll delay that pain a smidge longer. Right, let's talk some Big 12. Oklahoma State beat Tulsa 28-23. TCU got a good win against Cal 34-32 in a game they should have won but nearly didn't. West Virginia spanked LIU 66-0. Texas Tech beat SF Austin 28-22. Kansas State beat Southern Illinois 31-23. Arkansas, as we mentioned, beat Texas. Baylor beat Texas Southern 66-7. Oklahoma put 76 up on Western Carolina without reply. And Coastal Carolina beat Kansas 49-22. Anything catch your eye in the Big 12, Ash?
Well, I mean, unsurprisingly, Oklahoma beat Western Carolina, but I mean, putting up 76 points against anybody is impressive. The hiccup from Spencer Rattler early in week one, or early first half of week one, was quickly put to bed, as he did last year. He started slow, which we mentioned last week, but they unsurprisingly dominated this game, and Rattler looks every bit as the Heisman candidate and the potential number one pick as we expected, regardless of the opposition he was facing. 240 yards, 5 touchdowns, 20 for 23 completions. I mean, he looked as solid as he always has done.
Mm-hmm.
And we mentioned the Texas Arkansas game. Arkansas deserved winners. Sorry, Texas looking in the dumps after that, and yeah, Cal pushing TCU right up till the end. That 34-32 victory for TCU is probably a little bit closer than the TCU fans probably would have liked. So yeah, some interesting results in the Big 12 this week, definitely.
Absolutely. Talk me through the Pac-12.
Yeah, so Pac-12, we start off with one of the more surprising games of the week, but when you look into it, not so much. Texas A&M beat Colorado 10-7. Now, that is an incredibly slow scoring game. Texas A&M defense, we know, are a stout defense. They were last year. They look to be the same this year, but the offense only put up 10 points. Now, a big factor of that, Haynes King, quarterback for Texas A&M, went down really early in the first quarter and hasn't returned, and it has now come out this evening that he's going to miss a couple of months with having to have surgery. Off the top of my head, I can't remember what the injury is, but he's done for a few weeks now, a few months by the looks of it. His backup, Zach Calzada, came in, didn't really look that impressive. I think Colorado's defense were mightily impressive, as were Texas, which again we expect. So low scoring game. As soon as King went down, it looked like that was going to be the case. I think the winning touchdown came late in the fourth quarter by Texas A&M. It was a back and forth defensive game. There was 7 punts in a row, I believe, from the second quarter till I believe until the winning touchdown. There was 7 punts in a row on the previous plays. That says it all. This game was won by defense, and then of course a late touchdown by the backup to Spiller. Yeah, not the most impressive game on paper, but when you look at and see that King went down and the offenses ran through him, yeah, unsurprising that's what happened.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Go on. No, go on. Carry on.
Washington State beat Portland State 44-24. San Diego State came into Arizona and won this one 38-14. BYU beat Utah 26-17. Stocks is showing off the jersey. The first Holy War victory for BYU in 9, did we say before the pod stopped?
We did, yeah. 9 years.
Yeah. 9 years, yeah. And BYU are looking... they are looking impressive considering what they lost. And again, we've discussed it in depth in the preseason. They haven't skipped a beat, and they're looking impressive again this year. And getting that victory over their fierce rivals Utah is just icing on the cake for them.
Mm-hmm.
Stanford beat USC 42-28, which again, big surprising result. One of our games of the week, so we'll get onto it a bit later on. Arizona State beat UNLV 37-10, and Oregon State beat Hawaii 45-27. I touched on the Texas A&M game to start, but of course we mentioned the BYU. But anything else jump out to you on that one, Stocks?
I mean, the San Diego State win by that much is a pretty big deal. And Stanford, but we're going to mention that later. But and also Colorado, they're not a big school, but they look good all across the field in all three phases. And Texas A&M were lucky to go away with that one. And going forward, I mean, they're in real trouble with the polling, right, because of the situation they're now in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I think they're fifth at the moment in the. They're fifth in the AP rankings as well. And if King is out for a long time, and as I say, he's had surgery, so it looks like he will be. Yeah. Unfortunately, it could well be a missed opportunity for Texas A&M this year, because playoffs are open. That fourth spot is still open. So yeah, could well be a missed opportunity. SEC,
absolutely. Then. SEC. So Alabama State got handed a 62-0 loss by Auburn. Don't really know what to make of Auburn yet, because they faced 2-0 teams. We get a glimpse into them next week, because they get a pretty big opponent, right, Ash? I can't remember who it is. I think Auburn have got a big. If you look that up, I think Auburn have got a much fiercer competition next week. South Carolina beat East Carolina 2017. The Florida Gators beat South Florida 42-20. Georgia put 56 up on UAB, who only scored 7. Georgia looked pretty impressive in that one. Alabama beat Mercer 48-14 in a game many expected to be much higher from the Bama side. Ole Miss beat Austin Peay 54-17. Kentucky beat Missouri in an upset 35-28. LSU did get the win, but it was against McNeese State, and that finished 34-7. And Vanderbilt got a good win against Colorado State 24-21. Ash, the SEC, there's some interesting results there, right?
There are some interesting results, yeah. And we'll start with Auburn. As you say, they played 2-0 teams up to this day, Akron and Alabama State. Their season starts now. As it stands, with the polls the way they are, the rankings the way they are, they have 5 ranked teams to play on their schedule. That is Penn State next week, away. Georgia at home in a month's time. Arkansas the game after that. Ole Miss the game after that. Texas A&M the game after that. They finish with Alabama at home. And in between all those games, they still have LSU away to play. They've got Ole Miss. I mentioned Ole Miss. They've got Mississippi State. They've got South Carolina. Yeah, I mean, this is
tough.
This is when we're going to see what Auburn are going to do. The Auburn team this year. They had 2 gimme games to start the year, put up 102 points and only conceded 10. Yeah, could be tough times ahead for Auburn, because they looked suspect last year. We've not seen anything from them yet with the two teams they faced. We'll know next week against Penn State what Auburn team we're going to see this year, and what Bo Nix we're going to see this year in particular. Because obviously, of course, playing those 2 teams, he's looking well beater, which he did a couple of years ago. And we could be looking back at this in 4 weeks' time when they come up again, when they've just played Georgia, and go, well, yeah, Bo Nix, that's what we expect at Auburn, mid-table SEC again. See you later.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Starts next week for them, 100%. I mean, to be honest, there isn't really that many surprising results in the SEC this week. I mean, Alabama beat Mercer comfortably. I don't think Nick Saban's going to be happy conceding 2 touchdowns against Mercer, though, considering they conceded less points against Miami last week. So he'd probably be a bit raging about that.
I think when Bama conceded the points, they didn't have starters on the field. So
I don't think that will matter for Saban, will it? But you're right.
There is that school of thought where Saban would have done that to get touchdowns scored, just so the fact that he could go back to Bama and say, look, this shouldn't have happened. Or even if it wasn't the starters, he could say, this is unacceptable and this is what we're going to work on. So who knows? Ash, we're pushing the time limit already, as we normally do. So we won't talk about the group of 5. I'll stick them on the ticker at the bottom. There you go if you're watching. And there's a decent little segue if you're not watching. Come watch next week, 8 p.m. And you get stuff that you don't get in the audio form, because the group of 5 scores are rolling along the bottom of the screen now. Ash, let's talk some games of the week. We last week we We had Iowa State, Tulsa, Oklahoma, Stanford, USC, Oregon, Ohio State, NC State, Mississippi State, and Pitt at Tennessee. I mean, what do you want to do? Do you want to talk about them all? Do you want to talk about a couple? How do you want to play this? Because we could spend the next 45 minutes talking Ohio State and really annoy Jord.
Yeah. I mean, we have to cover Oregon, Ohio State. I mean, let's just start with that one.
Okay.
I mentioned it at the beginning of the show. Credit has got to go to Oregon in this game because they were impressive. They exposed Ohio State and their shortcomings on the defense. In particular, the rush defense last week against Minnesota was poor. Regardless if you're facing Ibrahim, even when he came off the field, the rush defense still were left a lot to be desired. And exactly the same happened this week. The rush defense and the defense as a whole for Ohio State was just not what you would expect from an Ohio State team and from the players that are there. A lot of turnover. There's a lot of sophomores and freshmen and guys that were backups last year, but that's beside the point. The Ohio State defense, you expect to see a good defense from Ohio State, and that is not what we got. And I think, to be honest, the scoreline is probably flattering to Ohio State because Oregon were in control of this game for the whole game. Stroud eventually got into his stride. He started slow, like he did against Minnesota. It's his second start as a collegiate quarterback. It's to be expected, but he looked impressive on the day. I mean, Ohio still put up over 600 yards of offense, so it wasn't that the offense was underperforming. They started slow and they left points off the board in the first quarter in particular, but Oregon were in control of this from the outset, in particular in the run game. And I think Anthony Brown, a lot has been said about him to start the year. That is he the guy to lead Oregon in this game? He was impressive. He led the offense when he was called upon to throw the ball. He did exactly what he was meant to do. And as I say, credit's got to be given to Oregon and the offensive coordinator with the way he manages the game. But Ohio State, the defensive coordinator, you'll have to forgive me. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but the amount of times,
Cotton.
Possibly, but the amount of times we played the same defensive, it's just honestly,
it was just a base look. Ohio State bought their base look. Yeah,
and do you know what it is? And I heard this on a couple of podcasts already that I've listened to today. We go into games expecting to be better to a man than everybody else. Yep. And it doesn't matter, and that's how we set out. And okay, granted, if you think you're that good, great. And we have got some great players, but when it's not working, change it. We didn't change it till the fourth quarter when we eventually got back into the game somewhat, and it was too late by then. We were 28 to 14 down by that point. The game was done. They just didn't react in the right way, and there's a lot of positives to take from Ohio from the offensive side of things. Mian Williams looks great as the running back. Trevion Henderson is the top class prospect that we are expecting to see, and he's only going to get better. Stroud has started really well, and you've got to give him credit for this game because he kept them in it. But there's just from the outset, this was Oregon's game. They controlled it. They played their game incredibly well. They came in with a plan. They executed it. They identified our weaknesses from the outset, and we didn't adjust towards that. And whether we can or not it remains to be seen. I mean, JT Tualamoa, the 5-star edge, didn't. I think he didn't start. He's a freshman. Okay, fair enough. He had a half a dozen snaps, maybe a few more, and he made one of the key contributions for the whole game with the pass deflection towards the end for Ohio State's defensive side of things. You've got to get him on the field. He is already one of our best players. There's no shadow of a doubt, but they just don't seem to be able to, on the defensive side of it, be able to react enough. And we had this issue last year, in particular on the Indiana game. We got exposed, and this is another game where our defense has got exposed because we think we can beat anybody just to a man, and they're not scheming, or they're not changing their defensive scheme as the game goes on. They just think they can beat people. And I mean, on one side, yeah, that's great. If that's the attitude to have. We can beat anybody, but at the same time, you've got to flex. You've got to change if it's not going right. And to do that in the fourth quarter when the game's done, I mean, it was just this was a missed opportunity. And now, first home loss for Ohio since 2017. Ryan Day's first regular season loss. And I mean, the playoffs are still there. However, we have to win out, and we have to hope that one of those teams above us slip up. Because if it stays as it is, even with 12-1, Ohio State will not be in the playoffs unless someone else slips up. That's how it
because
is.
the schedule for you and Oregon is exactly the same. There isn't really any tough teams on the schedule, and if it goes that you both win out, Oregon have got that tiebreaker. And if it gets to that situation, that because it is one of the biggest games the Ducks have ever won, the Ducks are going to get in. The AP poll will put them straight in because of the win against ranked Ohio State. For me, you're right. CJ Stroud, unbelievable, threw for over 500 yards. It was not on him. It was on the D. The stat for me from the defensive side of the ball was that they had 1 tackle for loss and 0 sacks in a game that they should have had more. And Mario Cristobal has built his Oregon team on offensive line. They lost Penei Sewell last year, and that doesn't really appear to have affected them. They've got rotational guys who have slipped in straight away, and they look really good. Oregon have built that offensive line again, and they've got weapons around Anthony Brown. But even last week I was saying if Anthony Brown has a bad one against this Ohio State defense, then he could be in trouble. And I think he's absolutely cemented himself as the starter with that performance.
Yeah, yes, definitely. Yeah, as I say, you can't take anything away from Oregon. They had their game plan come into this. They knew what they needed to do to win. They were at the top of their game across the field, and they fully deserved this victory. And as I say, it was probably a bit more flattering, the scoreline, than it should be for Ohio State.
Absolutely. Let's move on to Iowa State. Iowa won 27-17 in a game that they perhaps weren't expected to win. I don't think Iowa State has beaten Iowa in 5 or 6 attempts now. I think Iowa always have their number. And this was a poor game from both teams when you look at it, really, because I think Iowa had 170 total yards of offense and won by scoring 10 points.
Iowa had 173 total yards. And
there you go.
Yeah,
won by 10
points.
Yeah, I mean,
it was
unbelievable.
Defense.
Yeah.
All defense.
But then Iowa, the defense, as good as it is, you need to be able to score. And if they can't rack up big points, then they're going to be in trouble. But what do you make of all of this, Ash? Like the way it panned out?
I think credit has got to go to that Iowa defense, because they were incredible. The 4 turnovers, defensive score. They even made Breece Hall fumble the ball. You don't see that very often. That went for a defensive touchdown from the linebacker when he picked it up. Brock Purdy for Iowa State is exactly what everyone knows he is, and shown in the Big 12 title game last year. Turnover machine. He'll throw as many turnovers as he will touchdowns. He threw 3 today. Surely his time's running out. Why is Campbell still putting him on the field? That their backup, Hunter Decker, the freshman, came on, and he looked impressive for a freshman. Yes, the game was probably gone by that point, but he still put up, I want to say 111 yards. Let's have a quick look. 114 yards and a touchdown, 11 out of 16 completions, and he looked comfortable in the pocket. He wasn't given that much time because the Iowa State offensive line just did not look up to scratch on the day. But what he was able to do, he performed admirably, and it should put pressure on Purdy. I would hope that Campbell looks at this and gives him more of an opportunity. Breece Hall is Breece Hall. He had the fumble. Great bit of defensive play. I don't know if it was the edge or the linebacker but Brees Hall cut out to the left, and the linebacker made a tackle and hooked his arm around and knocked the ball out, and then one of the opposing Iowa defensive linebackers picked it up for the touchdown. So that was a good bit of play. But as I say, Iowa's defense won this game. Their offense was not amazing. Petrus got the ball moving when they needed to. They didn't make mistakes. Iowa State made mistakes on offense. Iowa defense were top tier and took advantage of that. That's how this game was won. It was, and as I say, you've got to give credit to Iowa. And to be honest, I think the 17 points for Iowa State is flattering. In my opinion, they were fortunate that Purdy came off, Decker came on, Iowa took their foot off the gas, and they got that final touchdown. They could have easily been in single figures in this game, to be honest with you. The Iowa State offense were poor from the outset. Iowa shut them down, and they didn't need to do anything on the offensive side. But I agree with you. If they want to be a top 10 team, as they are at the moment, they are currently sat 10th in the new AP rankings, they have to be better on offense. And unfortunately, I don't think they can step up a gear with Petrus under center. I think this is him. This is what we're going to see from him from the rest of the year. So I think it's going to be on Iowa's defense to keep them in those tougher games.
Yeah, absolutely. Ash, I'm going to flex. We're going to forget the other games of the weeks from week 2. I think we covered the big ones. We are going to get to the week 3 previews in a second. I know time is not of the essence, but we don't want to keep people up too late at 9 o'clock on a Monday evening. Before we get to the week 3 games, I just want to remind everyone to head over to Manscaped, get yourself a Lawnmower 4.0, use the code 5YARD, get 20% off and free worldwide shipping. Your balls will thank you. Trust me on this one. Right, Ash, week 3. Let's do it. We've got the 6 games. The Big Ten is Oklahoma State at Boise. The group of 5 game that Connor has chosen is the SMU at Louisiana Tech. Pac-12 is Arizona State at BYU. Big Ten, Purdue at Notre Dame. SEC, Alabama at Florida. And then Virginia at North Carolina for the ACC. We are going to go through these and eliminate 2. Shall we start at the top and start talking about Oklahoma State and Boise?
Yeah. This is going to be an interesting game. Boise State have not started as well as people have expected, and Oklahoma are missing Hubbard and Wallace from last year. I mean, they won against Tulsa last week, but they didn't look impressive. And yeah, Tulsa's defense did look good, but at the same time, I think Oklahoma State offense were poor. Is it Spencer Sanders?
Yep.
The weapons around him are unfortunately not to the level they were last year. No. And yeah, I don't think this is going to be a difficult game for both sides. Boise State can't run the ball. Oklahoma State can't seem to get much going at all on offense. I think this is going to be a defensive display that I have a feeling, despite the way that they've started, I think Boise State might get this one. I think it's going to be a low-scoring game, and I think the defense is going to make the difference. And I just have a feeling that Boise are going to make a few more plays on defense than Oklahoma State are going to be able to.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think it's going to be a close one. I think either team, I know this is really sitting on the fence, I think either team could win it on current form, but I think Boise have got more to improve towards, whereas we sort of know where Oklahoma State is right now. So I think Boise could edge it. SMU at Louisiana Tech, interesting one in the group of 5.
Yeah, this one is. And to be honest, I think if you look at, you can't really look past SMU in this one. I think the way they've started, and Mordecai, who you mentioned last week, is looking great. And Louisiana Tech are a good team, but I think SMU across the board have probably got a bit too much for Louisiana Tech, in particular on offense. As you say, Mordecai, I'm just trying to, I've already forgotten. We did it earlier, but I've already forgotten how they got on last week, SMU. I think they Oh,
They did win.
They beat North Texas 35-12. But again, Mordecai 4 touchdowns, 300 yards. Yeah, he threw a couple of interceptions, but when you're putting up 300 yards and 4 touchdowns, Ulysses Bentley, the running back for SMU, got him in a couple of leagues. Glad to see that I've got him because he put up 140 yards last week, and he's looking good. He's looking every bit of the running back that you want. Their tight end is one to look out for on SMU. Grant Calcaterra is his name. He's one to keep an eye on for the draft next year, 2022, as one of those sort of sleeper type tight ends. I would expect him to be able to make some plays against this Louisiana Tech defense. And I just think as a whole, SMU on offense have more than enough to handle Louisiana Tech.
Yeah, I could have done without Mordecai throwing those 2 interceptions last week because that would have sent me into the line against you, Ash. But we'll move swiftly on to the next game. That's the Pac-12, Arizona State at BYU. This could be a good one, you know. I think both these teams have got a lot to offer, and BYU, I think, might sneak this one.
I don't even think. Yeah, I'd agree with you. I think sneak's probably the wrong word. I think BYU are probably the. I don't think they are. I don't think they'd be the favourites in this one, but I think they probably should be because they, as I said, as we mentioned earlier in their game against Arizona, they just looked so impressive. They look like they haven't skipped a beat from last year, and what they've lost. And we went over it last week, so we won't go over it too much again. But I mean, just Wilson. They lost Wilson, number 2 overall, and he was the heartbeat of that offense last year. Jaren Hall has stepped in, and it's like Wilson was never even there. Hall has took this in his stride, and I think that says a lot about this program as a whole. That Hall, the backup, can come in and take this offense and continue what they did last year. And I think this will be a very entertaining game. Arizona State are no pushovers at all, but I just think BYU have got the momentum still from last year. They've had 2 impressive games to start the year. Arizona State have won. They're 2-0 as well, but they've played Southern Utah. They've played UNLV last week. I think Jaden Daniels is an interesting quarterback. Dual threat as they come, but he's more impressive on his feet. And I think this BYU defense are good in the rushing game. And if you eliminate Jaden Daniels on the ground, I think he might struggle. And if they stop Jaden Daniels, you are essentially stopping Arizona State's offense. They've got Rashad White as the running back, but outside of that, if Daniels is neutralized, Arizona State are neutralized. BYU, I can't see past them. I think they've got more than enough to handle Daniels on the defensive side, and I think Hall and the what's the running back's name? Tyler Algier.
Yeah, that's him.
Those 2 in particular, they can win this game on their own. And this is one game that I'm going to try and watch if I can, depending on what time it is.
So you saying you're going to try and watch it, I think you've probably noticed, Ash, I've already highlighted on the doc. It's going in as one of our 4 games on the Twitter poll this week. Moving on, the Big Ten, Purdue at Notre Dame. Notre Dame don't look like the team that they did last year. They've got serious offensive line issues, and even with Chris Tyree and Kyron Williams, I couldn't even remember my own running back's name there. Kyron Williams, they don't seem to be able to run the ball as effectively as last year. And Ian Book's gone. They just squeaked a win against Toledo. I mean, where's this one headed? Because this,
two in a row, 2 weeks in a row, week 1 and 2 that Notre Dame left it close. And you then see what Florida do the week after, Florida State. And now, obviously, of course, they get a 3-point victory over Toledo. It's difficult. Notre Dame they've got some weapons there. You mentioned him, Kyron Williams, the running back, can do it all. He can run with it. He can catch the ball. Jack Cohn has started he's not been great, but he's not been bad. Obviously, dislocated his finger, got it put back in place, came back on and scored the winning touchdown yesterday. So I mean, he's handling the job, but they just seem to be missing something. As you say, I think the offensive line is where it's really, they're missing players that have gone. Tommy Kramer, in particular, the guard from last year. Just the offensive line is falling apart more often than it should do, which of course then will impact Jack Cohen as the quarterback and the running game, Kyron Williams, because Kyron Williams is a smaller back. He takes advantage of those passing work and also the space being made. He's not going to bulldoze anybody on the floor. That's not his game. He's going to try and get the pockets, get into the gaps, make people miss, and make play in the back in the field once he's beaten the line. If you can't beat the line, you're neutralizing the running game.
Yeah, there ain't no room.
There is exactly not. Yeah, Michael Mayer, tight end, incredible. He is my top tight end in college. One of my top tight ends in college at the moment. He's shown that despite how Notre Dame's offense played, he was impressive. He is definitely one to watch. I think he's going to be a top tight end when he eventually comes out in 2023. I believe he is eligible to come out. But yeah, I think Notre Dame just are leaving a lot to be desired. Purdue, we mentioned it earlier in the breakdown. They had a gimme 69-0 victory against Howard, I want to say. Yeah. So again, they had an impressive win against Oregon State week 1. You've almost got they played UConn. They beat UConn 49-0. But again, it's UConn. UConn have done nothing. They've done nothing so far. But Jack Plummer, quarterback for Purdue, is looking good. 4 touchdowns, over 240 yards. They are getting moving as a team. The defense is staying solid. They, as I say, this week against UConn, you can't take anything from that. They beat Oregon State in the week 1, and again, offense looked good. They moved the ball well, whether that's running, whether that's passing with Plummer. The defense did well. They got a couple of picks against Oregon State. I think Notre Dame again should have enough to see out Purdue, but it should be closer than people may well have thought at the start of the year with how these two teams are playing. Purdue have got a little bit of momentum. Yes, Notre Dame are 2-0, but they've not looked great these last 2 games. I'm sure there's a lot of pressure on the guys from the fans. There's a lot of pressure from the coach, which in turn then goes on to the players. Just be careful. There could be a potential banana skin here in this Purdue Notre Dame game.
Absolutely. I've already highlighted the next one, which is the SEC, Bama at Florida.
Yeah, I mean,
we talked about Emory Jones earlier and what happens there. Bama are Bama, and I don't think it really matters who's starting for Florida. I think this one's a rollover.
I'd agree. Yeah, I'd agree. I think Bama just don't seem to have missed a step at all. When do they ever miss a step? That's half a decade. They are the team that just continues to roll on. Doesn't matter who you put on the field. Bryce Young looks incredible. I mean, let's hope Florida can give them a game. That's all we ask for. But it's going to be worth watching because they are 2 big teams in the SEC. But like you say, it's
I think
Bama's going to walk it.
Yeah, they're steps apart. That's the trouble.
Yeah,
Bama are on a completely different pedestal. So
yeah, and when Florida are one of the next top teams in the SEC, and Bama are steps ahead of them, I mean that says it all, doesn't it? That just says it all about Bama. So
they're just hungrily licking their lips for when Texas joined for another team to absolutely whoop along the line. And then finally the ACC, Virginia at North Carolina. Virginia on a 2-0 roll. And then North Carolina got the win. This one, although North Carolina got a win, it was an absolute cakewalk matchup. It's what Sam Howell needed. But I think there's a chance here that Virginia punch North Carolina in the face, and because their defense is good. And Virginia's offense is... Brendan Armstrong is showing that he is a superb quarterback. He can do it on the ground, and he's got a cannon. and they're using that to maximum effect. They're doing play action, but not only are they doing play action, when you watch their highlights, they've got pre-snap motion. It's not one guy. Sometimes it's 2 or 3 guys pre-snap motion, and they're moving defenders around the field. Armstrong's rolling out or pretending to hand it off, and then all of a sudden somebody's open and he's just unleashing that cannon, and then the defense are holding firm as well. So Virginia looked really good, and I think if North Carolina don't come out and haven't toughened up, I think Virginia could win this.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you. I think Virginia have more than a good chance of putting one over on North Carolina here. As you say, I mean, North Carolina beat North Carolina won this weekend, but we're still wanting to see it. Like, Howell got 3 touchdowns, got 350 yards, as you should do against a team like Georgia State.
Yeah.
But people are still going to remember that game against Virginia Tech week 1, and he's still going to remember that game. And arguably, and Andrew in particular from our campus, the Canton League ain't going to like this, but arguably Virginia are looking more impressive than Virginia Tech this year. And I think this could be a bigger challenge for Howell, and he could be left wanting again. And those weapons are still not there. You've got Josh Downs, who is an incredible wide receiver, but outside of that, Ty Chandler, okay, he's an all right running back, but he's not a Williams, he's not a Carter.
No,
they've got Howell, they've got Downs, they've got Chandler. There's not really anything else there. You're looking for it. I mean, Antonio Green, Antonio Green had a good game this week against Georgia State, but I mean, it's Georgia State. Yeah, but you should play well against them.
And he only had 3 receptions. He caught all 3 receptions for 115 yards.
Yeah,
but
averaged nearly 40 yards a reception.
Yeah,
says it
don't happen every week. Yeah, exactly.
I think Virginia could well take this one if they put pressure on Howell early, and Howell has shown at times he isn't great at handling the pressure. Virginia could take this one, and Howell's draft stock is going to be taking a big hit if he continues to struggle the way he has done to start the year, because the pressure, he just can't seem to navigate that intensive pressure on the front 7. And I've got to tell you how the NFL, that's all you're going to get if you're going to make it there. You're going to have to handle it.
Yeah, because then boys be bigger and faster in the NFL, right? I mean, yeah. I don't know what the point spread is at the moment. I imagine perhaps North Carolina are currently favourites, but if that's the case, I think I really fancy Virginia to cover.
Virginia are 10-point underdogs.
Oh, no. I think I'm taking that. I'm going to take Virginia at 10-point dogs.
I would as well.
All day long. Ash, I've highlighted that game as one of our 4. We're currently at Arizona State, BYU, Alabama, Florida, and Virginia, North Carolina. We need to pick one more between the Oklahoma State Cowboys and the Boise State Broncos. The SMU
Mustangs.
This is Mustangs against Louisiana Tech.
I can't remember what they are.
Oh, okay.
Against Louisiana Tech are.
And then the Purdue Boilermakers, I know that, against the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Where do you want to stick in?
To be honest, I'm going to have to go for Purdue Notre Dame, because I have a feeling Purdue might get Notre Dame, and I want to see that. So, do you agree, or would you prefer one of the other ones?
No. I picked 3 of them, so
okay,
I'm happy for you to have one.
I'll take Purdue Notre Dame then. Thank you.
You're welcome. So, yeah, I mean, that's 4 good games. We'll send them to Simo, and he can stick that out on Twitter. I'm just going to throw it across the bottom of the screen now. I just think it's I think they're 4 really good games. Simo, I've got no idea of the time, so if the Rush Nation Twitterverse pick a terrible one, you signed up for it as always, bud. But I mean, yeah, I think we could be talking about some really good games next week, Ash. Really good games. Before we get out of here, have I missed anything?
No. I think we've covered pretty much all of this week. It's been another great show as always, and it's been nice seeing my face on screen.
Well, there you go. I mean, we are out there live, and we can see it there. You know, people have been in and out watching. We thank you if you're here watching. We thank you for joining the stream. You managed to see Ash and I both with our snapbacks backwards because that's the official way to wear your hats. Ash has got his Manscaped t-shirt on. I've got the BYU jersey on. Lee hooked us up with a sick background as per all the other shows. Murph did a great job earlier. You've got the IDP, you've got the Dynasty, you've got DFS coming later on in the week. We are stacked here at 5 Yard Rush. Ash, week 2 firmly in the books. I took a loss in the showdown. I'm fully expecting a bounce back next week. I can't go 0-3. That would be devastating for the champion to do that, but who knows? Listen, let's see if our higher stake can bounce back next week. But, you know, another great show, my friend. Thanks for having me. And I've got to bow down to your knowledge. You turned up this week after your birthday celebration. So thank you very much, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no, it's been a pleasure as always. I had to make up for last week. I was below par, so I made sure I was back with a bang this week. But no, it's been fun as always.
Keep bringing it, my man. We're doing big things in 5 Yard College. If you go over to the website 5yardrush.co.uk, check out all the college boys, check out all the articles. But we are 5 Yard College here. I'm going to plug the college boys. They're doing sterling stuff with their previews and reviews, and I imagine there'll be some player profiles dropping real soon. But Rush Nation, you know, it's that time again. Saturdays are for rushing too.